How's it going, everyone? How you doing? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh Key. You hear me? And I don't know why I've been doing that lately. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting into our week 5 roundup. I apologize for being so late. I got busy. You know, life. But yeah, this is a crazy week. The playoffs are, well, we have the play-in matches. So basically, all these standings are set now. We know who's in the play-in matches. We know who got these spots in the playoffs, and we know the upcoming potential matchups for the playoffs and all that good stuff. So this week rounded out the regular season, and boy, was it a wild one. I mean, there were definitely some changes, nothing too drastic in the standings. There's definitely one major point that we will go over, one major coach who missed out on the playoffs. So we're actually going to cover that first. But I will say that you guys should definitely subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of me, which I know you do. If you want to see the top 5 fails with Luigi, top 5 plays with Nate Tube, and the power rankings with Lionheart plays. Well, actually, today is the last time he's going to be doing the power rankings, which we're trying to figure something out. A little hints for possible future things, changes to this video. Yeah, so regardless, you should subscribe anyways to see all those good videos, and subscribe to all the coaches so you do not miss a single match of the season. And I do want to mention real quick that my notes were kind of rushed. I only took notes on like 2 or 3 matches before today, and then I just kind of had to rush all the other ones. So I apologize if I missed stuff. I apologize. I had to like fast forward through videos and write stuff down, fast forward, write down. So I apologize if I missed stuff or if I missed certain points, big points in a match. I tried my best to include everything, so I don't know how much I would have missed, but if I didn't miss anything, then I apologize. But tis what tis. But yeah, first match up, we have the Fort Sill Warriors going against the New York Mutangs. The New York Mutangs walks away with a 6-5, a close 6-5 win over the Fort Sill Warriors, knocking the reigning champions out of the playoff contention. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard that right. The 3-time champ has officially been eliminated from the playoffs. Honestly, though, I've been telling him this, like, what's one off season to 4 incredible seasons? Like, it's really not that bad. So, but regardless, unfortunately, he did lose, and again, he is out of the playoffs. But he's actually quite relieved. He's definitely done with this season. So it ended up working out for him. But regardless, let's get into the match. This match started with Darmanitan and Hatterene, and Darmanitan was able to take out the Hatterene with an Iron Head. I believe it was 2 Iron Heads. But the Hatterene was able to paralyze the Darmanitan and get up a Trick Room before it died. After Hatterene died, Gastrodon was brought in, so Humberto went to Primarina. Primarina was carrying Energy Ball for it, and it did manage to take out the Gastrodon 2 Energy Balls. However, Gastrodon did what Gastrodon does. We say this every week, and it yawned, and it put the Primarina to sleep. Which would kind of come into play later in the match, kind of. I mean, yeah, actually, but yes and no. Yeah. But regardless, the Primarina falls asleep. Then Ferrothorn came in to deal with the Primarina. So Humberto switched to Mewtwo. He was, of course, carrying Flamethrower. I'm sure, Maxis would have recognized that, of course. But this made way for the Rotom to come in and actually get off an Eerie Impulse because Maxis knew he was going to use Flamethrower, of course. So he switched to Rotom Heat, and he was carrying Eerie Impulse, and he actually clicked Eerie Impulse on the Mewtwo. And it was definitely a big brain play from Maxis to bring that. That was a fantastic move to bring. And so Humberto did go to Primarina, and Primarina got taken out by the Rotom, and then Darmanitan came in and got taken out by the Rotom. And then Barraskewda came in and this close. It was this close to taking out the Rotom Heat with a liquidation, but unfortunately left it on very low. And Rotom Heat was able to use Thunderbolt, and of course Barraskewda died. Barraskewda is very, very fragile. So yeah, that happened. That was unfortunate. Barraskewda did take out the Rotom. That actually would have been really nice. How much of a difference it would have impacted, or how much it would have impacted the match, I'm not sure, but well, I mean, having a bit of a batting ram in Barraskewda would have been nice against some of Max's teams. So actually getting some extra damage off would have been really, really nice with the Barraskewda, but unfortunately that's not what happened. Then Mewtwo came in to to finish the Rotom with an Aura Sphere, and then Dialga was sent in on the side of New York. And although Mewtwo was able to handle the Dialga, I think it was 2-shot, Unfortunately, Dialga was able to get up a Trick Room. Unfortunately for the side of Fort Sill, Dialga was able to get up a Trick Room, and this ultimately allowed Ferrothorn to do some good work against Fort Sill, because once Dialga went down, Ferrothorn came in. Max's click Gyro Ball. Humberto hard switch from Mewtwo to Lugia, and Lugia took almost 3/4 damage. It was like very close. It's probably like 70% if I had to guesstimate. And Humberto did click the Dynamax with the Lugia, which was that the right call? Maybe not. Would it have made a difference? Maybe not. Honestly, I'm thinking in my head, I maybe let Lugia die, don't Dynamax, go to Whimsicott, get the defog off, get rid of the Stealth Rock so that Mewtwo doesn't take extra damage, and then bring in Mewtwo and Dynamax. It was a tough situation overall, and even he admitted that the Gyro Ball doing as much damage as it did to Lugia just completely threw him off. So that definitely didn't help. But Mewtwo was eventually able to come in and use Flamethrower on the Ferrothorn. However, Max still had his Dynamax, and he still had a wall for the Mewtwo with the Togekiss. So Togekiss Dynamax, and it was able to take out the Mewtwo. Mewtwo is already very low health anyways. But regardless, it was still gonna wall Mewtwo even if it was at full health. Then, much like in our match last season, Humberto and my match last season, Lugia came in and died to Stealth Rocks in front of a Dynamax Pokemon. This did give Ferrothorn another kill, and gave New York the win. By virtue of tiebreakers, Fort Sill, like I mentioned earlier, fell down to the 6th place spot, just outside of playoffs. I believe it was 6th. Yeah, they fell to 6th, just outside of playoffs. So it's unfortunate. The head-to-head and the KDs came into effect, and unfortunately, Fort Sill fell down to 6th, knocking them out of the playoffs. But it's Humberto. I mean, dude's got 3 championships. Doesn't really matter. Like I said earlier, what's one bad season to 4 incredible seasons? But good job, Max's prep was obviously there, and the in-game decisions were obviously also on point, so good job getting a win there. Next up, we had the Texas Tyranitar versus the Snowdonian Frostmoss. The Snowdonian Frostmoss walked away with their 2nd win of the season to clinch a spot in the play-in match. They had a 6-3 win over the Texas Tyranitar, and honestly probably should have been a 6-1 win, a reverse sweep, but Jakey made an interesting play at the end. And speaking of interesting plays, this battle definitely had an interesting start. So the Doorman decided to go all out yet again, much like week 2, sent out Yveltal, Dynamax. However, Jakey was smart. He led Quagsire and used Yawn, so that effectively prevented Alan from really doing anything. And instead of burning the Dynamax and saving Yveltal, Alan, the Doorman, let the Dynamax Yveltal fall asleep. It was interesting because in his video, he did call the Yawn. He knew Quagsire was going to use Yawn, so he honestly should have just switched right there, but unfortunately he didn't. I can understand maybe taking that risk, but at the same time, even when he got Yawn, he still didn't switch. And I know burning Dynamax obviously is not ideal, but it's better than having one of your legendaries fall asleep, but there was definitely instant regret on his side. You could see it. He said it, there was definitely instant regret, but Jakey seized that opportunity with the Yveltal falling asleep, sent out Mimikyu to set up a couple Swords Dances, and it was able to maintain its disguise, because there was a little bit of luck here, because Jakey, the Yveltal stayed asleep, so Jakey was able to get up the Swords Dances and keep his disguise. And again, although there was luck involved, Jakey did well to find the right start for this battle, to basically nullify anything his legends wanted to do early on. But once Quagsire was taken out by the Yveltal, and Mimikyu came in, like I said, it got up 2 Swords Dances, stalled out the Yveltal Dynamax, well, the sleep stalled out Yveltal's Dynamax, and then Jakey clicked Dynamax on his end with the Mimikyu, and was able to take out Yveltal and Espeon. And I think Jakey played his Dynamax in front of the Blacephalon really well. He clicked Max Guard, so that way he could fall back to normal, and then he would have priority Shadow Sneak to take out the Blacephalon. And then after Blacephalon was taken out, Lucario came in and died. Galvantula came in and died. There was even more luck on the side of on Jakey's side. bad luck for Texas, as Galvantula did outspeed Mimikyu because Jakey decided to click play rough, but it missed the thunder and it got taken out. If it hit that thunder, Mimikyu was dead. Mimikyu was dead. Would the match have gone differently? Probably not. I mean, Jakey still had his big hitters in the back, so the match likely would have still ended the same way, maybe even by the same scoreline too, but it at least would have stopped Mimikyu before it got 5 kills, and the MVP, by the way. And at this point, Alan, the Doorman's last Pokemon was Galarian Darmanitan, and instead of clicking Shadow Sneak, Jakey decided to click Play Rough. Now, Darmanitan's defenses are not great, so a +4 stab Shadow Sneak from Mimikyu would have killed the Galarian Darmanitan, honestly, or at the very least, I mean, would have come super close. Like, but regardless, it's priority, and literally the Mimikyu's name is I go first, so why not click Shadow Sneak? A Shadow Sneak would have likely taken out the Darmanitan and would have given Mimikyu all 6 kills and the reverse sweep, but instead Jakey clicked Play Rough, and of course Galarian Darmanitan outsped it. It took out Mimikyu with the Iron Head, then took out Archeops as well with the Iron Head after the Archeops did miss a Rock Slide. A Rock Slide likely would have killed Galarian Darmanitan too. But Zarude was able to come in and finish the match with a close combat. And again, the 2 questionable scenarios on the side of Texas in this match, or I guess the 2 scenarios that, the 2 what ifs, I guess. What if Alan switched out from Yveltal from the get-go, either on the first turn or after he Dynamaxed and got yawned? And then what if Yveltal actually woke up earlier? I mean, yawn guarantees you're going to be asleep 1 turn, so that's already 1 turn of the Dynamax, but what if he ended up waking up? You know, that's also a question. The luck was not exactly on his side either. Like, despite the, the way he played Yveltal early in that match, the luck still was not on his side. But Jakey was able to walk away with a 6-3 win nonetheless and secure his 4th place spot in the standings and a rematch with Texas in the play-in match, which we'll go over later. So yes, we're gonna be seeing these 2 go at it again tomorrow, and it's gonna be an interesting match. It's gonna be an interesting match. I seriously doubt Alan is gonna either A, lead Yveltal, or B, let it fall asleep again. So this is gonna be a really interesting match, and I think those what ifs are going to be answered, right? Well, more specifically, what if Alan just doesn't lead Yveltal and leads something else? What if he finds a better lead? Or maybe Yveltal is his best lead, and maybe he just needs to play it a little better. I don't know. This is going to be a really interesting rematch between these 2, and again, we'll go over it later. But good job on Jakey's part in finding the right lead and making sure he was able to neutralize all of... I don't know where I went. That was weird. Good job on Jakey's part on finding, the counters for Alan's team and taking advantage of them. So Jakey just has been performing well all season, and it finally paid off with him getting into the play-in match. So great storyline, love to see it. Hopefully he can continue that train, but at the same time I want to see Alan come back for his revenge next week, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Next up, we have the TJ Dropouts versus the Carolina Garchomps. The TJ Dropouts walked away with a 6-2 win over Carolina to secure their spot in the playoffs. They do not have to go through the play-in match. They secured their 3rd place spot in the Mega Conference and basically gave themselves to the bye week. This match was actually fairly straightforward. Carolina is eliminated from the playoffs. They would have been eliminated for other reasons I'm not going to get into, but regardless, they are officially eliminated from the playoffs. And this match, talking about interesting starts, I think Smoosh made the right call with leading Garchomp. I don't know if maybe Smoosh saw what Zygarde did to Newt's team because of how good of a matchup the typing was against Newt's team. Newt's team has a crazy ground type weakness. So it was smart on Smoosh's part to start with Garchomp. Newt led Zeraora, and I respect Smoosh's decision to Dynamax right away. Again, Newt's team has a really bad ground type weakness, so this was a great way to try and get rid of Zeraora and just battering ram, just steamroll right through from the get-go. And Garchomp Dynamax and was able to take out Zeraora, Naganadel, and Blissey. Now the questionable thing here is, why was Zeraora kept in? Naganadel, at least it was somewhat justified with the Toxic, right? Being able to get Toxic off on the Garchomp, but the Zeraora could have come in handy later on because Zeraora does outspeed all of Smoosh's team. So I definitely think the Zero Aura should have been saved. Maybe could have gone to Blissey earlier or Tauros or whatever his Pokemon that just didn't hit as hard. But he didn't. He let both of his legends go down early. That was a huge problem for him, as he probably should just sacrifice some of his weaker Pokemon in an attempt to slow down the Garchomp before his legends ever hit the field. Again, I can kind of see the Naganadel. There was some slight justification because the Naganadel did toxic the Garchomp, and when the Garchomp finally went down, it was because of that toxic. But it wasn't before Garchomp basically got another kill. It brought Tauros all the way down to red. And then it went down to the toxic, so it essentially got 4 kills. But regardless, after Garchomp died, Smoosh sent out Rillaboom. Of course, Rillaboom gets priority in the grassy terrain with Grassy Glide and took out the Tauros. Then Salazzle came in for the Rillaboom, but Smoosh smartly switched to Volcanion, and Volcanion was able to handle the Salazzle. Then Newt brought in Hitmonchan, who is his last Pokemon, and hit Dynamax and was able to take out Volcanion in 2 hits, but Cinderace came in and used Acrobatics to take out the Hitmonchan. And again, not the best decisions in the world from New, especially more so when it comes to his legends, how he played them early in the match. He probably should have started sacrificing some of his other Pokemon to make sure his legends would be alive later on. I'd say at the very least Zero Aura. Like I said, I keep saying it, the Naganadel one was kind of justified with the Toxic, but Naganadel is still a threat regardless. And then, you know, Zero Aura, of course, would have outsped all of Smoosh's team. So preserving the Zero Aura for later would have been great, especially if he would have been able to take out the Garchomp anyways. So the legend play definitely hurt Newt a lot, and basically it was just a matter of time. Once Zero Aura and Naganadel went down, it was only a matter of time before Smoosh was able to capitalize, and that's exactly what he did. So good job, Smoosh. Good job securing your 3rd place spot, and great job recognizing how well Garchomp would do against his team. Next up, we have the Iowa Incineroar versus the San Antonio Espers. The San Antonio Espers walked over the 6-2 win over the excuse me, sorry, my notes are all over the place. The San Antonio Espers completed the 5-0 perfect season, and were able to walk away with a pretty comfortable win here. I don't. It's hard because I don't know how much more Landon could have done. Like there would have had to been a lot of things going his way. Sly would have had to make, I think, a couple misplays. I don't know. The matchup just was not great for Landon, and I really can't say he misplayed. I don't think he entirely misplayed. Maybe the Zacian was, letting it take so much damage was a problem, but at the same time, Kyogre is a big threat. So was it that bad? Because he did take out the Kyogre. But regardless, the match starts with Kyogre and Incineroar. Kyogre inside of San Antonio, Incineroar on the side of Iowa. And Landon made the right call by switching to Zacian. He did take a hit after Kyogre used Substitute and Scald. But Sly decided to bring Substitute. Was actually a decent play, and ultimately would have been vindicated if he had burned Zacian. Otherwise, though, it didn't really amount to too much. Zacian was able to take out the Kyogre with Wild Charge, like I mentioned. However, Zacian was left at roughly 35 HP, I think, something like that. And that's probably the only thing I'd criticize Landon on this one. But at the same time, he took out a huge threat in Kyogre, so it's like, was it a terrible play? I personally don't think so. I don't know what else he really could have done. Maybe a Moonkiss would have been better for Kyogre, even though it had Ice Beam. I don't know. It was, like I said, this was just a tough matchup for Landon. And like I said, I don't really think he misplayed all that much. But Kyogre died, and Sly smartly brought in Scizor, prompting Landon to go to Incineroar. And of course, Sly switched out and went to Mamoswine. And Mamoswine actually did outspeed Incineroar. Incineroar is not incredibly fast, and Mamoswine actually has decent speed. And it was able to take out the Incineroar with an Earthquake. So there went Landon's main counter to Scizor. And then Landon brought out Vanilluxe to set up the Aurora Veil, and it did eat an EQ from Mamoswine. Actually ate 2. However, Landon, the Vanilluxe was left on 25 HP when it took out the Mamoswine, so it was left on really low health. So what Sly did smartly, he brought out Blaziken and hit the Dynamax with the Max Knuckle to get set up with the attack boost, and of course Blaziken has speed boost, so Blaziken outsped the rest of Landon's team and took out Vanilla Exashin and Amoonguss to finish up this match. And unfortunately, it was just a bad matchup for Landon. I really, like I said, I can't criticize his decisions in this match. I can't, because it just was not a good matchup for him, you know. And I mean, he would have had to take out Kyogre, Blaziken, and Scizor, I think, before losing any of his Pokemon. So that was already a difficult enough task, you know, and obviously not having a full team and all that, but he would have had to take out those 3 before he could really do a lot of work against Sly's team. So, or those, I like how I said 2 and I held up 3, but he would have had to take out those 3 before losing any of his Pokemon to really put work in against Sly's team. So it was just a bad matchup. It was just a bad matchup. And I will say, Landon is right. The EBL was founded on having fun, and it has evolved so much that, and even though it may still be fun, I feel like you guys do kind of sometimes forget rule number 3. Rule number 3 in the general rules. Go look at it, read it, look over it, just absorb it. That is the embodiment of the league. Sometimes the league doesn't feel super fun. But Landon did make a point in his video with that. But like I said, I can't really criticize him all too much. And of course, this does mean Iowa is out of the playoffs and San Antonio secured their first place spot. Next up, we have the Colchester Celtics taking on the Walton Wingles. The Colchester Celtics walked away with a 6-1 win over the Walton Wingles. Pretty comfortable win, honestly. The match started with Malamar on the side of Walton and Jolteon on the side of Colchester. And the lead actually did kind of benefit Walton. However, Pidge made the right call by using Volt Switch and went into Mudsdale to get the stamina boost. It was very smart in his part. I mean, Nate tried the same thing that he tried last week with the Malamar, the whole superpower contrary baton pass thing. And Pidge read it perfectly, and he went to Mudsdale, which was the best counter he could have gone to. And again, Nate tried the baton pass thing again, a little more successfully this time. Last time it just got completely shut down. Not even a little more successfully. It was successfully pulled off, as in he did the baton pass. He was actually able to do it this time. But if Mudsdale didn't have stamina and didn't click Iron Defense the first turn it was able to use a move, then Gigantamaxing the Snorlax would have been a good decision. However, a +3 defense Mudsdale was always going to tank anything the Snorlax wanted to do, because that's what Nate baton passed into from the Malamar. And this effectively wasted Nate's Dynamax. And honestly, he maybe should have gone to Celesteela instead. Like, I know Celesteela, I think it had 1 physical move, and I know it had 2 special moves. And I know the attack boost may not have benefited it all too much, but the defense boost would have helped it. And he would have been able to handle the Mudsdale faster, assuming Pidge wouldn't have switched. However, I mean, again, it's assuming Pidge wouldn't have switched. He likely would have gone to Jolteon had that happened. But regardless, Pidge was able to take out the Gigantamax Snorlax, because this is for you, Nate. Body press is based on the user's defense, not their attack. I believe that's body press. Right? Yeah, body. I like how I wrote it in my notes, like I knew 100%. And yeah, the higher the user's defense, the stronger the attack. So basically, it's based off the user's defense. That's why every time Mudsdale was getting hit and its defense was getting raised, the baton pass, the body press was doing more damage. So with every stamina buff, the horse's body press was getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and that's why I was able to take out the Snorlax. Celesteela did come in to finish the horse, which is maybe what Nate should have done in the first place. But regardless, momentum at this point was definitely on Pidge's side, and especially when Jolteon came out and took out the Celesteela in 1 hit. That pretty much, from that point on, it was a matter of time, because at that point, Zamazenta and Solgaleo had not touched the field. And the second they did, it was just going to be lights out from there. Malamar did come out in front of the Jolteon, and it was a repeat of the way the match started, as Jolteon did Volt Switch out instead. This time, though, obviously with no Horsey, Pidge went to Hatterene, and Nate used the Baton Pass strat to go into Copper Job. However, Pidge actually took that Baton Pass turn to Swords Dance, and then used the Baton Pass of his own to go into Solgaleo. when Nate baton passed with Copper Jaw, he maybe is a toughie. You know, he maybe should have gone to Slowbro. I don't think the end result would have been different, though. I think Solgaleo was just going to be too strong for his team regardless, because A, he would have had to tank hits from a Dynamax Solgaleo that's +2, and B, it's a legendary. So, of course, it's going to hit a lot harder. Regardless, Solgaleo with the +2 attack boost was able to handle the rest of the Nate's team with ease. And Dynamax took out Copperjaw, Colossal, Clarence Slowbro, and Malamar to claim the Dynamax Conference MVP. Racked up 4 kills, and actually the late charge from Solgaleo was awesome to see. It got 5 kills last week, and then got 4 kills this week. 5 kills? Was it 5 kills? It got a lot of kills last week, and it got a lot of kills this week too. So Solgaleo is definitely going to be a Pokemon to watch out for in the playoffs, because it's starting to heat up. But Pidge did a great job, especially with that late baton pass, holding on to it. Then he found the right moment, sent out Hatterene, did what he had to do, and Solgaleo was able to handle the rest of Nate's team. So obviously Pidge's tactics are coming out to play. That made 0 sense. Pidge did a good job. Next up, we have the Florida Rowlets take it on the LA Inferno. The LA Inferno walked away with a 6-1 win to complete the perfect regular season and claim first place in the Dynamax Conference. The Florida Rowlets, unfortunately, are with this loss, were eliminated from the playoffs, as I believe they were in 6th place. Yeah, they're in 6th place. So unfortunately, Mike did not make the playoffs. So that's how those were the stakes with this match. Mike needed to win to have a shot, and he would have gotten to the playoffs had he won, based off all the other results, but unfortunately that was not the case. But this match started with Rotom Heat versus Cinderace, which was a beneficial start for me, as Cinderace can't really do too much to Rotom, specifically Rotom Heat. So Mike decided to U-turn into Groudon, and I Will-O-Wisp first turn, expecting him to switch. Either A, he was going to switch, or B, he wasn't going to use a fire type move on my Rotom Heat, so I was going to be able to Will-O-Wisp it anyways. And it missed, of course. It missed when he went to the Groudon, which was unfortunate, but I decided to just stay in, go for the Will-O-Wisp again, make sure I burned the Groudon, because I didn't want the bulk ups, the attack boosts from the bulk ups to become a problem. And so I brought in Lapras to make sure the bulk ups really didn't matter at all, because Lapras was a special attacker, you know, and Groudon's building its physical defense, so it wouldn't have mattered because Lapras was going to hit it with a special move. And I was able to actually get up a Reflect and take a hit really well from the Groudon. And this forced Mike to switch to Galarian Damanitan, and I let Lapras die to the superpower from the Galarian Damanitan to make sure that I could bring in Zacian on the weak Garmanitan so I could get up a free Swords Dance. I think at that point Mike should have switched out from Galarian Damanitan. It was weak from the superpower, so I just kept clicking Swords Dance. I will say there's definitely some bad BM. I shouldn't have clicked it 3 times. I do regret clicking it a 3rd time. I did feel bad when I watched the match back. That was unnecessary. It really was. Even clicking it twice was honestly greedy enough. But regardless, clicking it 3 times, it just wasn't necessary. I don't know why I did that. But Mike stayed in, hoping he could use Struggle with the Garmanitan, because his thought process was that he wasn't going to make the playoffs, so he was just going to say screw it and go all out in the match, which was not true. If he won, he would have made the playoffs. So I'm very curious how he would have played that had he not had that sort of mentality, you know. However, according to Lionheart, it wouldn't have been able to use Struggle anyways, so Mike staying in ultimately would have been fruitless regardless. And it did essentially hand me the key to victory, kind of sort of. Had he brought in, so obviously Zacian was able to take out the Galarian Damanitan. It was on super low health from the, I believe Lapras surfed it twice and brought it down to red. And so obviously I got my setup going with the Zacian. I was able to take out Galarian Damanitan, and so Mike sent an Excadrill, and I obviously one-shot with a close combat. And I think at that point, Mike honestly probably should have gone to Zeraora there. Instead, he sent out Cinderace. I was able to close combat the Cinderace as well, and then he sent out Zeraora, did a fake out, did a lot of damage. And I knew the Zeraora was going to outspeed, and based off the moves that he had already revealed, well, based off seeing Fake Out, I knew more than likely his moves haven't changed, so that's why I went to Rodriguez, and Rodriguez just completely walled the Zero Aura because obviously all of Zero Aura's moves had no effect on the Rodriguez, so I was able to just completely wall the Zero Aura with Rodriguez because I knew Mike didn't change his moves, especially when I switched and I saw that he had one of the same moves again. I knew that was, I was able to wall it. And I was able to actually predict his Azumarill switch. I double backed into my Leafeon after I switched to Rodriguez. And although, regardless, it still would have been a smart decision because Leafeon did well against both of his remaining Pokemon, both of his Pokemon being Azumarill and Groudon. So it wasn't like super big rare play. It was just like, I don't know. I expected to be able to take a hit from the Zero Aura anyways. But I also did expect him to switch. So that's why I went to Leafeon. And I clicked Leaf Blade and I hit a crit onto the Groudon. I think that crit definitely mattered. And I was able to take that out in one shot. And he switched to Azumarill. Sorry. He switched from Azumarill because he had, like I said, he switched out and I switched to Leafeon. He switched from Azumarill to Groudon and the Groudon got crit hit with the Leaf Blade and taken out. He switched to Azumarill again after that. He switched to Zero Aura. I went to Rodriguez, so he went to Azumarill. So I stayed in and I was just going to let Rodriguez die. However, Rodriguez took the hit pretty well because of the sun. And I actually was able to gain huge power from the Azumarill. It ultimately would have mattered because Zero Aura was Mike's last mon and it really couldn't touch Rodriguez, so the huge power really wasn't like a big deal. But regardless, Rodriguez was able to take out the Azumarill and then the Zero Aura to complete the reverse sweep. It wasn't a clean reverse sweep. I had 3 Pokemon get kills, but regardless, it was a reverse sweep nonetheless. Like I said, I'm very curious how Mike would have played this had he known that there actually was a chance for him to get into the play. If he won, he was going to get into the playoffs. So I'm very curious to see. I wish I could have had the version of Mike that, was fighting to win and get his spot in the, at least I think he would have just gone to the play-in match. But still, I mean, I would have been curious to see what version of Mike I would have faced. But unfortunately, that was not the case. And we were able to walk away with one regardless. Next up, we have the Detroit Luxrays versus the Montebello Morpeko. Montebello Morpeko walked away with a 6-3 win to complete their perfect season. Yes, there are 3 people who had perfect seasons. And with the 6-3 win over the Detroit Luxrays, they did so. Fortunately for the Detroit Luxrays, Florida lost, which is the only team they needed to lose to be able to at least get a spot in the play-in match. So they are still fighting for to get that last seed in the playoffs. So it's gonna be interesting. We'll see. Like I said, we're gonna talk about the playing matches later, but it's gonna be real interesting seeing that rematch with DC, who we'll also get to later. But this match started with Grimmsnarl and Quagsire, and Carlos decided to switchy witchy to Rillaboom, switchy witchy to Rillaboom to try and scare out the Quagsire, which he did so successfully. Max opted to switch to the Blaziken and start to kind of get it set up. Carlos did bring out Grimmsnarl. However, it took quite a bit of damage, and he honestly probably should have gone to Glare and Weezing from the get-go to stop the speed boost. And clicking Haze was the smart play, though, when Glare and Weezing did come out, but Grimmsnarl was left on red, and so Carlos hard switched to Glare and Weezing and clicked Haze to get rid of all those speed boosts to make sure Blaziken couldn't baton pass anything onto anyone. And at this point, Carlos predicted a Blaze Kick from the Blaziken and went to Reshiram, which was not an awful play, obviously. Reshiram does quad resist fire, so it just made perfect sense. And at that point, Max opted to switch to Salamence, which this is where an interesting thing happens. I'm not sure what happened here. I think from what I've seen, maybe the IVs weren't built correctly on the Salamence. Apparently it was a beneficial speed nature and it was built into speed on EVs, but maybe the IVs weren't built properly. And so Reshiram outsped the Salamence, which should have never happened. And it was able to one-shot the Salamence with Dragon Pulse. And this took out a huge threat to Zekrom, to both of the legendaries, really, on the side of Montebello. And again, I'm not really sure what happened with Salamence's speed. I don't think we've gotten a definitive answer yet, but that was really unfortunate. And that gave Carlos full control in this match. No, well, maybe not full control, but it gave him more control in this match, and momentum was definitely starting to go on his side. So after the Salamence died, Max decided to bring in Gengar. So Carlos decided to switch to Zekrom, but honestly, at that point, he probably should have just let Reshiram go. And so that way Zekrom wasn't going to take as much damage as it did. Or maybe he could have gotten up a D-Dance with the Zekrom because, you know, knew he would be able to take one hit from the Gengar. So maybe he could have gotten a D-Dance and then basically finished the match from there. But unfortunately, he didn't do that. He hard switched to Zekrom out from his Reshiram, and Zekrom took a lot of damage from the Gengar. And honestly, though, Max really wasn't able to take advantage of all the hard switching Carlos was doing, because Carlos, Mr. Toe, at this point was starting to take a lot of damage from all his hard switching. And it was a lot of unnecessary damage. I mean, this is flashbacks to when Max played Jakey in week 3. When Jakey did a lot of hard switching, was taking a lot of unnecessary damage. That time Max took advantage. This time, not so much. But regardless, Zekrom took a hit from the Gengar and then was able to outspeed it, which also I think was a little, I think it outsped it, which was kind of weird. Again, because Gengar is pretty fast. But regardless, it Dragon Clawed the Gengar, one-shot it, and then Quagsire was brought out. So Carlos brought in Blastoise and hit the Quagsire with a water type move. That was, Carlos made a lot of mistakes this season. That was to add that to the list because that was not great. Because obviously Quagsire carries water absorb. I guess maybe you can justify it by saying maybe he thought he had unaware, but I know Carlos doesn't know the Pokemon's abilities like that off the top of his head. So yeah, that was not a great play from him. So Carlos switched to Rillaboom after that happened, and so Max switched to Magnezone, and Carlos was able to take it out with 2 Earthquakes. And at this point, Carlos was 4-0, flying high. I mean, the momentum was definitely on his side. I mean, I doubt he would have been able to sweep. I mean, there's not much he could have changed to be able to complete a sweep, honestly. But at this point, he was up 4-0, and again, he had momentum all on his side. Then Kyogre came out in front of Rillaboom after Rillaboom took out Magnezone, and Carlos did not make a good player. Max made the right play by Dynamax and Kyogre, and Max guarding first turn to stall out the Rillaboom's the grassy terrain so that Rillaboom didn't have priority anymore. And this is where Carlos made a play that honestly just handed Max some momentum in this match. Not quite, you know, the pendulum didn't quite swing in Detroit's favor, but it did swing a little bit towards Detroit, because Carlos, instead of switching out and letting someone else die, he chose to Gigantamax's Rillaboom, and this effectively took out Carlos's most effective threat and his Dynamax in one turn. I mean, maybe Zekrom was Carlos's most effective threat, kind of, but then again, Quagsire is quad weak to grass, so Rillaboom was his best Pokemon left on his team to handle the rest of Max's team. And again, instead of switching, letting something else die, like the Grimmsnarl or Weezing, whatever it may be, he chose to Gigantamax's Rillaboom and stay in, and even Max was like, what? Because again, it just didn't make sense. It really didn't. It was not a smart decision. Was it the worst play in the world? Not necessarily, but he should have definitely saved the Rillaboom. It just was not a good play overall, because again, you know, even Max said in his video, like, Rillaboom takes out my Kyogre and it's quad effective against the Quagsire, so why not save it? And this is like the third match where Carlos is pretty much trying to hand the victory to his opponent. He did it against Timmy, did it against Alan, and now he did it against Max. However, I do not appreciate you calling Carlos stupid, Max, even though it was kind of a stupid play. It was not a great play. What I think Carlos should have done was, and I already kind of mentioned it, was go to Weezing, let it die, go to Grimmsnarl and either use Thunder Wave or Light Screen, let it die, you stall out, boom, that's Kyogre's Dynamax gone. Then go to Zekrom, and you can either Dynamax at that point, or just stay normal, try to take out the Kyogre. Max likely would have swapped to Quagsire, predicting the Electric type move, but then that would allow Rillaboom to come back in, and Rillaboom would have the terrain back up, and the match likely would be over from there because Grassy Glide would regain priority, and he'd be able to take out the last two of Max's Pokemon. So yeah, the way Carlos played Rillaboom was not great, and ultimately gave Max some momentum in this match, and prolonged it a little longer than it really needed to go, and made the ending a little nervy. Would the result have been different? I mean, obviously not. The result didn't really change too much, but it was still a big win for Montebello. But it definitely would have been a bigger win had he, made the right play with the Rillaboom. But regardless, Kyogre was able to take out Rillaboom, and Carlos sent out Grimmsnarl, and Max chose to Calm Mind first turn, which is interesting. Maybe he thought the Grimmsnarl couldn't really do anything to it and that he would outspeed. Regardless, Grimmsnarl used Thunder Wave first turn, and with Kyogre being slower because of the paralysis, it was able to use Thunder Punch and take out the Kyogre. And then this is where Quagsire came out and was really annoying. Quagsire, Whirlpool, Yawn. I can't even remember all its moves. Whirlpool, Yawn are the only ones that are popping into my head. But regardless, Quagsire was the last mount for Detroit, and although again it was annoying with the Whirlpool and all that stuff, and it took out Grimmsnarl and Blastoise, it was ultimately taken out by Glare and Weezing to finish the match. Again, the play with the Rillaboom was not great. I don't think that was great. Again, this is another match where Carlos makes a big mistake that could also ultimately maybe not necessarily cost him the match, but just makes the match a lot closer for no real reason. And he's been doing that all season. These mistakes, these big mistakes. He makes a big play, then makes a big mistake, makes a big play, then makes a big mistake. So it's unfortunate. He had a lot of improvements when we were working in the preseason, and doing practice battles for him, making sure he's all up to speed and stuff with competitive, and he picked it up pretty quick. His main problem is remembering Pokemon and their abilities and some of the things they get. That's why you'll see him freaking turn and just like do this. He's pulling up Pokemon DB. That's why he freaking made a misplay against Allen. Because he was busy looking something up. So the improvements are there. He's still kind of a diamond in the rough, though. He still has some things to work out with his mistakes. Like I said, he makes a big play, makes a big mistake, makes a big play, makes a big mistake. So he definitely has some stuff to work on. But yeah, and those mistakes made this match a little closer than it really needed to be. But regardless, I think this was just a bad matchup too for Max. I think Zekrom and Rillaboom, the combination of those two just was not a good matchup for Max. And this match likely would not have ended any differently than it would have unless Carlos, I guess, didn't bring Zekrom or Rillaboom. So, but obviously he was going to bring them. So good job on Carlos for dominating a good majority of this match. Definitely needs to work out those mistakes, but did a great job with dominating a good portion of this match. And good job on Max, honestly, because some of his plays were actually pretty smart. I think there were definitely some things he could have done differently. Obviously, falling into a 4-0 hole or an 0-4 hole was not great, but there were definitely some things he did well in this match, like the Kyogre Max Guard to stall out the grassy terrain, all that good stuff. I think that was smart. So there's definitely good stuff from Max, but he was ultimately out-muscled by Carlos' team. Last but certainly not least, we have the DC Starbase versus the Greater Manchester Greninjas. The DC Starbase walked away with a 6-3 win over the Greater Manchester Greninjas to get into the play-in match. They secured their the fourth spot in the standings, so they were able to get into the play-in match, and they're going to be taking on the Detroit Luxrays. And I want to say, first off, it was really nice of Timmy to not lead Mewtwo, because we saw what Mewtwo did against Lake's team in week 3, I think it was, when he played Humberto. With the lack of training on Lake's Mons, and we saw what Mewtwo could do to Lake's team already, like I said. And Dragapult did not show up, so that gave Mewtwo even more free reign. So Dragapult would have, if it wasn't trained, maybe it wouldn't have outsped Mewtwo. But regardless, Dragapult still would have hit it hard. Instead, Timmy decided to lead his other legend, or I guess it's a mythical. Timmy led Marshadow, and it took out the Charizard that Lake led with. Corviknight was sent in to take out Marshadow, which is exactly what it did. So Timmy sent out Shmoope, the Volcarona. That was a terrible attempt at an accent. I apologize. Which did manage to take out the Corviknight. And then Rayquaza came out on the side of Manchester to try to deal with Volcarona, which is exactly what it did. And it took out Shmoope with Dragon Ascent. So of course Timmy sent out Mamoswine, his ice type quad effective Pokemon against Rayquaza, and took it out with an Ice Shard. And then Lucario came in and was able to take out Mamoswine with a Meteor Mash. Then Mewtwo hit the field. And at that point, Mewtwo Dynamax took out Raichu, Lucario, and then Glaceon to end off the match. And good job on Timmy for teaching Link how to battle and not sweeping him, because we all know that's how you learn. But in all seriousness, a fully trained team would have honestly done some good work against Timmy. At the end of the day, though, I mean, it's always up to the coach whether they want to put in that extra time or not. We all need to remember, again, rule number 3. Go look at it, guys. Rule number 3: have fun. Some coaches don't exactly want to, not so much that they might not want to improve. It's just they might not have the time, or they might not want to do all that extra work. And I don't blame them, because it is stressful. But regardless, Timmy did a good job. Maybe, again, made it a little more complicated than it needed to be. But not maybe, he definitely made it more complicated than it needed to be. But good job on Lake for recognizing some things within the battle. Stuck to his guns and just went for it. So that was good on his part. But regardless, Timmy walked away with a 6-3 win in this one. And with all that out of the way, congratulations to all our winners for this week. Again, all these standings are solidified now, so we know all the matchups that are going to be going down, or a majority of the matchups that are going to be going down. And with that being said, let's talk about the play-in match. So for those of you who might not know, the play-in matches, are between the 4th and 5th seed in the standings. And the winner gets the final spot in the playoffs and will play the number 1 seed in their respective conferences. So with that being said, first up, we have the Snowdonian Frostmoths versus the Texas Tyranitar. Again, this is a rematch, an immediate rematch between these two teams. Which a rematch, I mean, within your conference, rematches are pretty likely. So, but regardless, this is an immediate rematch, and we saw what Snowdonian did to Texas. However, had Allen switched his Yveltal and not let it fall asleep, it would have been a whole different match. So I'm very curious to see how Allen will approach this. I always tend to favor the losers of the first match in the rematches between teams, especially in immediate rematches. I always tend to favor, I'd say loser, but you know what I mean. I don't mean that in a bad way, of course. I just think they have the advantage, because they're able to switch up their whole game plan and do some different things. Versus the winner, it's kind of a conundrum. Like, do you stick to what worked, or do you change it up and try something different, and risk, that strategy not working out? Do you stick to the tried and true, or do you just switch it up? Like, what do you do there? So this is going to be really interesting to see how Jakey approaches this match. I think it's always a question. I feel like the pressure is always definitely more so on the winner of the match, to make sure that they can obviously win again. So I have faith in Jakey that he'll come up with a game plan to be able to cover some of the differences that Allen might have on his team. This is going to be a really interesting match. I think this is going to be closer. I think personally, I think this is going to be a much closer matchup unless one of them somehow gets up setups again and things start to go south. I'm actually gonna back Jakey in this one. I think he'll be able to walk away with his second win against Texas. However, again, I expect Texas to come up, come into this match and go big and do a lot of work. I don't I don't think this will be as one-sided as it was this last week. So, but I am gonna back Jakey. I've been backing him all season. I've been believing in him, and he's finally he's heating up. He's getting these wins. He's making all the right plays. He's doing all the right things. Not to say Texas hasn't been. Obviously, a 30-game skid is not amazing, but at the same time, Allen's done a lot of good work this season. But that's what makes me believe that this match is going to be a lot better than it was this last week. But I am going to back Jakey to walk away with a win in that one. That is the play-in match for the Mega Conference. The play-in match for the Dynamax Conference, we have the number 4 seed DC Armies taking on the number 5 seed Detroit Luxuries. By the way, the Snowdonian Frostmoths were number 4 seed. Texas was the number 5 seed. The DC Armies obviously dominated the first time these two teams met up against each other. However, Detroit did leave out some key players from their team, so I'm curious to see how Max will approach this match, because there's definitely, I know Mewtwo is a great matchup against Detroit. However, there are ways for Detroit to counter it and make sure it doesn't really run as rampant as it did. So there are ways to possibly counter that Mewtwo. Will Max recognize them? We'll see. It'll definitely make for a more interesting match. But I think Mewtwo ultimately, even if it does go down, it'll probably get quite a few kills before it does go down. So it's going to be interesting to see how Detroit deals with that. I'm expecting Mewtwo to get at least like 3 kills. And we'll see how Detroit is able to climb back out of that hole. With that being said, though, I still think Mewtwo is too strong for Detroit. And again, I think Mewtwo is going to give DC, even if Mewtwo goes down, I still think it's going to give DC enough of an advantage to close out the match and secure a spot, the 4th seed, the official 4th seed. So I'm backing both of the higher seeds in this in these play-in matches. And Snowdonian the winner of the Snowdonian Texas matchup will play the San Antonio Espers. And then the winner of the DC Detroit matchup will play yours truly. So it's going to be really interesting to see who comes out big. But I'm backing Snowdonian, and I'm backing DC. And to the 2 competitors I did not pick, get out there and prove me wrong. Put on a show. I want to see some incredible matches. Both of these matches that happened, the first time were not super close. So I hope we can get some closer matches out of these. But like I said, to those 2 I didn't pick, get out there and prove me wrong. I want to see some great matches out there. And again, another congratulations to all of our winners from this week. And that is that for the week 5 roundup. Again, I apologize. It was late. Got a little busy. Got a little sidetracked this week. But regardless, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video and if you're here, be sure to like and subscribe. Check out these socials in the description. Be sure to subscribe to the EBL channel. And subscribe to all of the coaches in the Elite Battle League so you do not miss a single match of this season. This upcoming Saturday, we have Jakey XY, the Doorman, It's Really Timmy B, and Game Reviews. That's where all the matches are going to be. So be sure to check out those channels and go subscribe to them so you not miss the play-in matches. And of course, be sure to check socials, every friends, family, everyone let the people know the Elite Battle League where it's at. See you guys in the next one. Bye.